Hello and welcome to Minter Dialogue, episode number 159. This interview is with Delphine Mousseau, VP Markets at the fashion online retailer Zalando. Dealing with the complications and localization in 15 European countries, Zalando is a standout German success story, having turned profitable last year on sales of over 2 billion euros. In this podcast, we discuss several of the localization challenges, including payment, customer care, product offer, and communication. It's a fascinating approach. Welcome to the Minter Dialogue podcast, where we discuss brand marketing with a focus on all things digital. I am Minter Dial, your host and author of The Mindset. That's MYNDSET.com, where branding gets personal. You'll find the show notes to the blog for the upcoming interview. Let's cut to the quick. Enjoy the show. So, welcome to the Minter Dialogue, and today a repeat offender. We don't have too many of these on the show. Delphine Mousseau. So tell us who you are. Thanks for coming back on the show, Delphine. Tell us who you are and what you're up to, and, if you can, what is your mindset?
So, I'm Delphine. I'm a weird French because I've not been living in France for now more than 12 years. I've been working in e-commerce since 1999. And still really enjoying it a lot. So I'm now based in Berlin and working for Zalando or Zalando, depending on where you come from. And I'm in charge of the market, so really leading our matrix organization from the country perspective. So excited to be here today, very relaxed with 35 degrees outside in Berlin.
Indeed.
And feeling like summerish.
Summer, super. So Zalando, as we were talking before, it's a highly well-known brand, but for those who don't know it particularly well, how would you describe Zalando? What would be some of the key components to understand what is Zalando?
So Zalando is a multi-brand fashion store with actually 1,500 brands and 150,000 products every season. So you can find everything you think about in terms of fashion at Zalando, from the basic brands to the most advanced brands, the premium brands. Just think about men, women, kids, accessories, sports, lingerie, you name it, we have it.
And what about your size? How big are you, and who would you consider your competitors?
So our size is, last year we did actually 2.2 billion turnover across 15 countries in Europe. We don't have really direct competitors. We have a lot of competitors in niche, like ASOS, for instance. We have competitors doing all sorts of assortment like Amazon, but their overlap with us is quite limited. So I would say we don't have really comparable, at least in sizes, competitors, because we're really offering a range which is we cannot be found anywhere else. We're the biggest sneakers store in Europe. We're the biggest denim store in Europe. So if you're looking for something specific, you're sure to find it at our place. Not sure you can find it at our competitors.
One of the things that we often talk about with e-commerce is the profitability, and Zalando marks itself out by being profitable. Tell us what you can tell us about the profitability.
So Zalando started really, really strong. I mean, it's a very young company. Only less than 6 years ago, they started, from scratch. So it's been growing super, super fast, and mostly because, of course, a lot of money has been injected to create the brand, create the awareness, but also, play with all the performance marketing channels and really, raise that traffic that's needed to get the volume. So for long, actually, we've been losing a lot of money, but really investing in the long term through a high growth. Last year, we've shown good profits with 62.1 million euro profit. So it was not really expected in the market. And I think this is why our IPO went so well. We managed to show that we can grow fast, but at the same time profitably.
So what would you say, so you've been developing the brand, how would you characterize or qualify what is the Zalando brand?
So the Zalando brand is really, it should be, and it will be still being our fashionability. It's really a fashion partner, someone where you can find the fashion which is relevant for you, where you can get the right advice, where you can get the right selection of products. And we're getting stronger and stronger in our personalization to make sure that you really have the relevant fashion experience for you.
All right. So, Delphine, you're in 15 countries in Europe, correct?
Yes.
and you're dealing with all these different markets. So one of the things that I wanted to dig in with you is how you are going about adapting to each of the markets. Because, I know another question I wanted to ask you before we get into that, which is about your offline presence. Because, there's sort of this rumbling that online is great, first of all, not necessarily always profitable, and can we exist only online? How do you react to that, and what's your strategy with regard to on and off?
So there are several elements in there. First, you need to get your online right. And I have to say, we've been starting in Germany and in what we call the DACH countries, so Germany, Switzerland, and Austria, and trying to expand from those countries. And I have to say, we've made a lot of progress in the other countries across Europe, but we're seeing that we still have way to go, a lot of room for localization. So we'll talk a bit later about what we've been doing recently, but we have a lot still, before we can consider alternative ways of growing. So I would say, let's first work on the recipes, which are, let's get our online experience right. Then on offline, I think this is something definitely we need to work on. We are doing pop-up stores. We are doing collaboration with fashion weeks here and there in different cities in Europe, the next one being the Stockholm Fashion Week at the end of August. Mm-hmm. We try to be really present and visible locally. Going to the offline store and trying to have a shopping experience offline is still not yet defined. It's something that we still have in mind, but I think it's premature at the moment because we've got so much more to do just to make the experience online as good as it can be.
Yeah, surely. Well, it's an interesting thing because, we live with a screen in between us. You and I are Skyping, and it's a very human experience, right, as we speak. And, of course, nothing's going to replace the old handshake. At the same time, you do need to get into people's minds. And so the communication efforts and television or, old-fashioned newspapers almost can still be ways to get into people's minds, which, it's considered as offline. And then there's, making the experience more interesting, getting into the people's minds, the opinion leaders. And so it's such an interesting challenge to move from an e-commerce only online into that other space that's typically occupied by the typical offline players.
No, I think to keep the communication going, definitely we're working on having more and more touch points. I think at the beginning, Zalando was very much focusing on the TV campaign. I think it was one of the first e-commerce players really using TV heavily. We had this cream advertising, that somehow could be the German humor was not always fitting all the markets, but really very shouting really loud. And I think it really helped the brand awareness at the beginning of our journey. Now we're really trying to get more touch points. So we are doing out-of-home campaigns, we're doing print campaigns, we're doing events, we're doing all sorts of things to make sure that we can have several contacts with our customers. When you talk about having a closer relationship, we're trying new stuff which are working quite well. For instance, we've launched recently in Germany our Zalando, which is basically a contact with fashion advisor. So you're in contact with one person in particular who's going to put together an outfit for you with, head to toe and sending it to you, and then you can try it on and keep what you like. So this is a kind of way you can have this kind of personal contact and really be close in the fashion, with this fashion advice, basically.
And so Zalando is based in Germany, and some huge portion of your business is presumably German. I don't know exactly what it represents for the total. But one of the things you and I were talking about, we're going to get into is the idea of this sort of central office, the managing, directing, controlling, and, the countries must obey. Let's talk about some American companies that are very much command and control, from central office. Let's call Apple, not to mention others. You guys are in the process. You have a very strong German market. You have some very German-speaking companies, as you were just countries. And so you're developing the other countries. Talk us through your strategy of trying to evolve from a sort of a command and control into a more localized approach.
Yeah. So I think at the beginning, basically the idea was to take the German USP, which is free shipping, free return, and also this payment and invoice, and basically spread it. So just go and conquer the different markets in Europe. It worked out well in some countries like Switzerland, which is very close. Somehow as good also in the Netherlands, but in other countries it was not really working as good. So very quickly we realized we need to have a local twist to whatever we do. So we had basically dedicated market people in each of the functions Last year, we've reorganized and went into a matrix organization. So basically, we have all the people dealing with one country sitting together here in Berlin. It's very easy for me managing Europe. I can go downstairs on the ground floor to talk to France or Netherlands, or to the second floor to talk to the Nordics. But it really creates this idea that we have really a local strategy, and then each function is contributing to the success of that local strategy, and really brings this understanding, this local understanding. So of course we're recruiting a lot of local people to work here in Berlin to address those local topics.
All right. So how much offices are there in each of the countries? I mean, what does Zalando in Italy look like as opposed to the Italian team in Germany, in Berlin?
So everything is based in Berlin. We have a buying office in Paris because we have a lot of specific French brands. So we've at some point opened different offices. The one in Paris is the one which is still there because it really makes sense to have a presence locally. Everything else is done out of Berlin.
And when you hire people for Italy, do you have to have an Italian?
Depending on the functions. I would say if it's a commercial planner, it doesn't really matter. Though we have a lot of applicants from Southern Europe because, of course, unemployment rate is a bit higher. So
indeed.
But indeed, we try to have locals as much as possible.
All right. In the realm of problems that e-commerce has, one of them was profitability. There are problems like myths that we have about it. So one of them is this challenge of being profitable. Another one is a trust. And the trustworthiness of the brand you're buying from, trusting in general marketers. One of those areas of trust is in the payment area. And so I was going to talk us through how you've had to, deal with the payment component country by country in different ways.
So it's extremely important. I think the trust comes from the experience, and you need to have a perfect experience. And a perfect experience means something very different per country. So it's true that, paying later is the best way to get the trust. So the payment on invoice, which is the preferred payment methods in most of the DACH countries, is helping a lot because, of course, as a new customer, basically, you don't take any risk. It's not the case in the rest of Europe. In most countries, if we would often pay on invoice, of course, nobody would pay the invoice, so that would not work. I would just wanted to give the example of Italy. I mean, Italy is some way in terms of payment very, very far behind. 29% of the Italians do not have a bank account. That's really huge.
I mean, it's crazy because there's so many banks in Italy.
This is how it is, Of course, maybe it's not completely our target audience, but still, culturally, not having a bank account is okay. Not having a bank account in France would be really weird. Yeah. And so we've moved to offering cash on delivery in Italy more than 2 years ago, and the impact has been tremendous. I mean, it's more than half our payments are done through cash on delivery.
So does that mean
it creates a different kind of relationship. People really have to give the money to the carrier. And most of the time, they actually know the carrier, they know their postman, and they give their money to their postman. And it's this kind of way that you can create this trust.
And so, I mean, I want to just unpack one portion of that, which is the choice of your carrier. So I assume that's all third party. And then, to what extent that trust component via the carrier is so relevant? Like do you want to go with La Poste in France and UPS in other countries, or how do you work that to find the best combination?
Most of the time, the local national carrier has got the historical relationship and this trust, so we tend to go for the local carriers. But we have learned in different countries that it would make sense sometimes to go for the bit more expensive carrier and have the better relationship. So wherever we've got the choice, we really have been very cautious in choosing. What we see in the development for the future is that we need to have more options. And even though we've got free shipping for the basic options, we're adding new carrier services. So we've added Express last year, so people can pay extra to get their shipment faster. We're going to add extra options. So for instance, in Switzerland, since January, we're shipping a sort of a form of Express. So basically your order is batch prior in the warehouse, and then it's shipped in the evening and then given to the carrier during the night, go through customs, and then you get it delivered in the evening. So people who are working, they love this actually Express because it's It's 1 to 1.5 days later, but you get it specifically in the evening after 6 o'clock. So it's a very practical product for people, and the adoption rate has been really, really high.
Drones?
I cannot give you any numbers.
No. Drones.
Drones, sorry. Drones could be an option. The question is, how do you deal with fraud and people stealing the parcels and things? So
Right, or shooting down the local thing, right?
if the drones is able to come back with a signature on receipt, then I'm fine with drones.
And what about marketing or the advertising? How have you managed that? Because in the end of the day, having been, chief marketing people, we're always interested in having consistent branding and then optimization of your costs, because so much better to have one television shoot that works for everybody. How have you approached that?
So we've started, of course, by having one spot for everywhere. And then we thought, okay, we need to go local because we need to have a specific humor per country. Because the first spots were very onto having something humoristic to be easier to memorize. And we've realized actually this is not really the way to go. What we've really understood is that we need to have a local message, like something which is really relevant to the level of maturity of each market. So I will give an example. For instance, in Italy, we've had already a campaign, and we're going to continue with a specific campaign with a local testimonial. So a model who's really known in Italy. So to create this trust, but also to explain that it's so easy to get this free shipping, free return, makes your purchase really easy. And it sounds basic, but for Italians, the returns, for instance, is not that obvious. We see in focus group that when we talk about returns, people think that they're going to get a refund in voucher, not a refund in money. There is some kind of guilt also from the Italian customer that if they return, it means they broke their promise. I promised that I'm going to buy that product, and then I don't buy it in the end, so I'm guilty. It's just like, sorry, what's your problem?
Right.
And we're going to show in our autumn spot that actually returning, even if you don't like it, it's okay. You can change your mind.
So are you doing absolutely different creatives for each, or do you have like a video creative that you just voice over differently?
No, it's completely different creatives.
Wow.
But we choose like certain markets that we push for a certain time, and once we think the education and the understanding of the USPs at the right level, then we can go back to our main core message.
All right. So in this localization process, you do an ad, and of course, in this sort of new world, we have to optimize and repurpose our ads. So this means that you're doing an Italian-specific creative, and then presumably that means you also have a very social-specific approach to Italy as well.
Yeah, especially because Italy is very social. Italy is one of the countries where the social media is the highest. In the way that, for instance, in Nordics, people use social media but are mostly looking or observer. In Italy, they are participants. But let's go back just on the localization. I'm going to give you another example, which is quite interesting. We had a very big campaign with Cara Delevingne, with Topshop, a co-branded campaign. And actually, it was a global spot. Like most of the country carrying Topshop assortment had the same spot. But she was trying to pronounce, it was a tongue twister, she was trying to pronounce the difficult names of the cities where actually Zalando is shipping.
I see.
But she was pronouncing a different city for each country. So she would say Clermont-Ferrand for France, or she would say
Clermont-Ferrand,
Garmisch-Partenkirchen for Austria. So even on something which is actually generic, done for all the countries, we give this little extra local twist, because this is what people can relate with. It's extremely important to give this local flavor that people feel that we're talking to them and not as a generic European
just
flavor.
a voiceover. So actually, in the creative brief, you have, let's say some chunk of the creative, which is the same. And then you add in, hey, Cara, you need to say one for Germany, one for France, one for Italy, one for Spain, one for Portugal, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. But this is something that didn't came as supernatural at the beginning. And then once we tested it, we realized that it's a must. It's really how it works. And we had a fun, copy of our spot by Clermont-Ferrand University. And have a look. It's pretty fun to see how people really connect when we talk local.
That's cool. All right. And another thing that, of course, is so important if you take the Amazon example is customer care. And I think customer care by itself is an important topic, because typically, let's say most companies, or a lot of companies, even though it has the word customer in it, they somehow, for some reason, don't really give it as much value. They like to outsource it. It's put in the warehouse, or the cheapest possible group of people, and yet it is the link with the customer that many B2C companies like a L'Oreal or others, don't. That's their real opportunity to interface. So customer care is super important. What is your approach to customer care? And by the way, I would love to know, who do you benchmark against in order to establish the strength of your customer care?
So customer care is definitely extremely important. We've been focusing since the beginning of the year into the NPS, really the satisfaction of our customers. And it's true that in the past, it was not the main center of attention, because we were looking for growth and we couldn't really afford to have a perfect customer care. So we've really made good progress. Talking about localization, a funny example is that, for instance, for Switzerland, which is quite a big country for us, we used to have German speakers from Germany. Of course, out of Berlin, it's so much easier. And at some point, we decided to move to Swiss German, and the satisfaction of our customer increased by double digits. So it's interesting to, even in those small details, that this feel for local is extremely important. What we've done recently, we have rolled out chat for customer care. So we see a very good result on chat. So we're really moving from customer care with being a must-do into customer care being really a way to create satisfaction with our customers. So definitely an area where we're investing quite a lot.
So that ultimately, that's quite complicated, because that means that, if you have the Austrian telephone calls coming in, or the Swiss German company calls coming in, you have to manage the flow, as opposed to having Germans for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's more expensive.
Yeah, well, the good thing is that we're getting so big that we can afford to have this complexity. I'm happy I'm not head of customer care, because it's still complex, but it's manageable. And basically, we have the critical size to be able to do it. Most of the tools are getting more and more sophisticated from a customer care point of view, because customer wants to be reached where they are. The same way you want to interact on Facebook with a company, you want to interact with for your problem on Facebook. So you were talking about who do we compare with? I think it depends on countries in Europe. I would say the countries which are more advanced in customer care are the Netherlands. For the Dutch, breaking the promise is a big issue. Yeah. Trust is really based on keeping the promise. So whenever something goes wrong, you better make sure that you talk about it, you address the problem. And I think two examples are really good. KLM is amazing. KLM, if you take a flight, tells you during, when you enter as a first message, we'll answer any of your questions on social media within the hour. And they're really keeping their promise. Another company in the Netherlands, interesting, is also Coolblue, which has been growing on electronics only and white goods, and basically grown from nothing to something quite big, focused on customer care. So those are the kind of example we look at. I don't think this is a benchmark for everywhere in Europe, because not everyone has got the same expectations, but this is really where we think we should be going long term.
That's super interesting. And I just kind of think about, because you and I are multilingual, living in Europe, I was just thinking, so do you have customer care for Strasbourg as opposed to Lille?
Not yet, but Marseille, maybe one day.
Yeah, exactly. Or, Belgian French versus French.
Yeah, we've got Belgian French.
You do?
Yeah,
as opposed to French.
Not all agents, but we tend to try and make sure that we've got Belgian agent when possible.
And so is your customer care in-house?
Not all, but a big part is, yeah.
Yeah, and so the other thing with customer care is the amount of information you have to feed them. I've been in a few other organizations where you're dealing with 1,500 brands, 150,000 products, and having to keep them aware of what's going on all the time in Belgian French and French and so on and so forth. How do you manage that?
So I think we just managed through really having high expectations. We've really put a high expectation in terms of first contact resolution. So if you want to meet those targets, you need to be aware of what's going on. So we've got an information person in each team grabbing all the information related to that market. So we've got a lot of information circulating in between the market and the customer care of that market to make sure that they know what kind of promotions going on, what kind of voucher is used, what kind of specific action on the app is going on. So there's a big flow of information.
It seems so important. All right, the last area I wanted to talk about was product. Because you have so many products, is it one for all? How much are you, culling and swapping and changing the offer per country? And how do you manage that? Because that's sort of a logistical nightmare.
Yeah. So for now, I think I would say we're really best in class in shopping experience. So everything which linked to putting things in your basket, payment, shipping, returns, refund. I would say on fashion experience, we still have a way to go, and I hope this is where I can bring a bit more value. I would say we have a very good local assortment, not yet perfect, but I would say in each market we've got the key brands which make sense for that market. And basically we're very good at giving you a personalized view based on what you've been browsing before. So recommendation engine and things are very sophisticated, so you can get a good glance of what you need. So if you like one product, and you want something at a slightly different price and a different color, you can look at the recommendation on the page and it works really, really well. However, we aim at being even more personalized. So for instance, we've launched now a partnership with Amaze, which is an app, sort of a Tinder for fashion. So this is the kind of way that we should collect more information to help you have a personalized experience. So basically the products you see on Amaze are the Zalando products, maybe some more around, but mostly Zalando products, and basically you like, don't like, and then you go deeper in the offer. Because the problem is that having so many products, people can get lost, and this is not what we want. So we want really to guide them in looking at what is relevant for them.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things I noticed, you have luxury, one of your tabs on Zalando, and I was just interested to figure out how you determine luxury. Is it an argument? Does some sort of say, I want to be in luxury amongst the brands?
Yeah, somehow, yes. I mean, some brands really position them in premium. Some brands want to have double exposure in the main catalog and in premium, the ones who are, I would say, at the sweet spot. Some brands really don't want to be mixed up, even though some of their articles are at a decent price point that would be in the main catalog. So it's a bit of a discussion, ongoing discussion. But what is most important that people looking for premium are not disappointed. So they need to find what they're looking for. So if they get their only cheaper stuff, they would not be pleased. So we need to make sure that it's really what people are looking for.
All right. So in this sort of area of localization, you got all these customers that are in these 15 markets, and as we know, email remains an important part. I'm sure you can maybe tell us a little bit about that. But how do you manage to have a mass customization? I mean, because that's sort of where a lot of these e-commerce sites are having to go to. You have the recommendations that are personalized, presumably. What talk us through your approach to trying to create a less monolithic company into something that feels like, oh, this is for Minter.
Yeah. We're moving on step by step. I cannot tell all the plans because they're going to be executed in the coming 12 months. But I would say we've got an approach similar to a department store. It depends on the shop floor and on the corner. And basically, when you go into a Galerie Lafayette or a House of Frasers, you see different groupments of brands. And this is somehow the kind of feeling that we need to reproduce on site. We collect a lot of information on your behavior, so we've got the data. Now we need to work it out to make it really work as precisely as possible for you. I think what is really interesting is that we're less on the newsletter but more on the app, and people interact more and more, and we've got ways to interact. For instance, we have our product feed. So at the bottom of the page, you have a lot of products, and you can say, I like them or I don't like them. I can like that brand or not like that brand. And that helps really basically learning what is relevant for you. So the same way as you discuss with the sales rep when you enter in the store and say, I don't like it, you can also interact with Zalando and say, I don't like it. So we can, show you products which are more relevant for you as you interact with us. So it's keeping this conversation going, and we're going to get more and more efficient at it.
Give me an idea of mobile as opposed to desktop. Where are you in terms of business? Can you give me some stats?
Yeah, of course. We've got more than half of our traffic going to mobile already, and it's growing a lot. And we really think that we need to be mobile first, and we're developing most of our new all our new developments first on mobile.
The last question, Delphine, is about within the trust category. Mm-hmm. So we've talked about the payment component, the logistics component, and then there's this notion of transparency. What is your position with regard to transparency, and how much can our different markets tolerating lack of transparency or opacity? Is it something that every country says, listen, do as I say and say as I do, or are there some countries that still sort of allow, I would say, some less attractive approaches to pricing, for example?
I think, the consumer is a bit schizophrenic. He wants to have something very personalized, but not necessarily want to give the information.
Right.
So it's like going to the doctor and saying, I don't want to address, but tell me what's my problem. It just doesn't work. So culturally, some countries have really issue with data privacy. So like Germany is really still protecting a lot and making sure the information is shared to a certain extent. In the end, it works only if people, share their behavior, so we can really help them the best possible. Some alternative, of course, as I was mentioning, is the personal interaction. So if you don't want to basically interact with a machine, you can talk to someone. I mean, we give all the options so the consumer can make it more personalized through a personal interaction with Zalando, or less human, more with machine. If he interacts more because during his commuting time, he wants to basically play on his mobile. Everyone's got a different behavior, and we can offer basically different ways of addressing the need of the customer.
All right, Delphine, our time is up. I really appreciate your time, so I don't want to grab you for any longer and take advantage of you. There's a friend over in the States who says, well, would you have a shameless plug that you want to give to us?
Yeah, the point that I really want to mention is that we're growing really, really fast, and I've got a lot of empty seats around me. So that would be really, really nice if people would look at jobs.zalando.de to get those interesting positions we have opened and apply.
Does that include people moving? I mean, does that you have to get people expatriating or impatriating? I guess.
Joining is fantastic. So come there. You've got the creativity of Europe, the dynamism, the good spirit, low tax. I mean, and good weather. What can you expect more?
It's a great culture too. So, Delphine, what's the best way someone can reach you or follow what you're up to in terms of social or whatever you'd like?
You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, go to the website, but mostly download the app.
All right, we'll do. We'll put all that into the show notes. Delphine, thanks for coming on the show. Danke sehr schön.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having listened to this recording of the Minter Dialogue Show. You'll find the show notes on themindset.com. That's mindset with a Y, where you can also sign up for my weekly newsletter at /subscribe. If you like the show, please do rate it in iTunes. That really makes my day. Happy trails, and enjoy Josh Sachs's Painted Fingers.
Oh, fill me with all your colors, any different way to rid me of the gray. And heal me with all your imperfections that you mention in your lack of self-security. Oh, I wouldn't care about the art form as long as you would feel warm, wrapped in canvas. Hold me tightly, slowly we would paint a lover's portrait with all your favorite shades, and we'd paint it with our fingers to show the world the way we feel. Oh, the way we feel. Oh, so messy. The ridges in our palms make colors blend and look ugly in the end, but they're pretty in their own disgusting values. We'd hang our portraits in the hallways, make our house guests cringe. Oh, I wouldn't care about the art form portrait with all your favorite shades, and we'd